Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick-Taking Table. I'm Table, and today, again, it's Short Story Hearts Month. The game we'll be covering is Salvage, but since it is Short Story Month, let's cut to Taylor over on the couch with a cozy storytime sweater, and then after that, we'll come back and I'll teach you how to play. Hey, welcome to Taylor's Story Corner. Get ready for an embarrassing story. So some context, I was going to college at the time, and I needed to write a thesis. So I asked my film professor, very sweet person, if they would be my mentor for my thesis. They were like, yeah, that sounds great, I'd love to. Would you want to meet sometime? And since it's a pretty big undertaking to be a thesis mentor, there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of back and forth, and I felt, oh, this person is so nice to mentor my thesis, I wanted to accommodate them in any way possible. So I said, anywhere you want to meet, anytime you want to meet, I'm golden. And they were like, hey, do you want to meet in Portland at 8 a.m.? I said, yep, sounds great. And so they're like, do you live in Portland? Like, does that work? And I said, perfect, works perfectly. Love to meet there. Because I knew they were someone who, if I would have told them where I was actually living, which was in Bend, Oregon at the time, which is, as you can see on the map, a few hours away, I knew they would want to meet in the middle and they'd be so accommodating as well. So I knew I didn't want to impose on them at all because they were already doing such a nice favor of being my mentor. So I said, no worries. I live in Portland, meeting at 8 is perfect. So, yeah, I wake up at 4 and I drive the few hours and I show up and we're getting coffee. And the first thing they ask is, so where in Portland do you live? Good thinking ahead, Taylor. The whole, 3-hour drive, 3.5-hour drive, I did not think of where I lived in Portland. And I live in Portland now, but I, at the time, knew nothing about the area. So I kind of just blank, and he's looking at me like, what? This guy's nuts, what's going on here? And I'm just looking at him, trying to think of anywhere in Portland I could live, right? But I'm realizing it's taking way too long. And he's realizing it's taking way too long for me to come up with an answer of, a very basic answer of where in Portland do you live? And so he goes, are you on the east side? And I go, yep. Because in my mind, I didn't want to say no. What am I doing, playing 20 questions with the guy? So I say, yeah, I am. Thinking he'll stop asking or something. So he goes, oh, interesting. Are you on the northeast side? So I go, yep. Because at this point, can't say no, right? So then he says, oh, are you east of blah, 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 blah street? And I go, yeah. He goes, are you north of blah, 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 blah street? And I go, yeah. So I'm like saying yes. Just anything this guy says. I can't say no. Where's that lead? So I just keep saying yes, hoping he stops asking. It doesn't. He eventually gets to a street, like a corner street. He's like, oh, do you live on the corner of blah, blah, blah? I say yes. What are the odds that this man has randomly, perfectly guessed where I live in Portland? Very low odds, and I think he was aware of that. So I'm feeling nuts, I'm feeling insane. This is a horrible first meeting for the thesis. But he seems excited by this, and I'm like, is he realizing I'm a fraud? Where is he going with this? So he says, oh, do you live in the blah, blah, blah apartment complex? And I go, yep. And he goes, my son lives there. And I go, whoa. What are the odds? That's wild. That is so wild. A normal human would have said no at this point, or would have said they live somewhere else. But again, I'm a dumb human. So I said, that's nuts. What are the odds that I live at the same exact apartment complex as your son? He says, this is hilarious. I'm going to write something down. You should deliver it to his door, knock on his door, or toss it under, or tape it to his door or something. I said, yeah, sounds great. I unfortunately have immediately forgotten the name of the apartment complex, the name of the cross streets. So he gives me a note to give somewhere in Portland. So yeah, sounds great. I'd love to. Yeah, right after this meeting, when I go home, I'll totally do that. He says, great. We have a normal meeting. Everything was fine. It was great. And I leave and I proceed to drive for an hour or so around Northeast Portland, looking for any apartment building that rings a bell. Couldn't find it. And the next time I meet him, it was never brought up again, which I was thankful for. I'm sure he knew at some point the serendipitous nature of me living in the same exact apartment complex of his son ended up maybe not being as close to the truth as possible. But hey, you know, live and let live. I think I learned a valuable lesson of making sure to say no. I didn't really learn a valuable lesson. I do the same thing in the next short story, so get ready for that. Alrighty, back to you, table. Oh man, you really gotta sort your life out. That's brutal. Well, funny segue, can't really salvage that situation. The game we're covering today is Salvage. It's a game by Sacha Tata Alexander and Hai Tata. I'm so sorry if that is just the absolute opposite way you pronounce your names. But the premise is it's kind of like a Hearts-like game, except you are bidding for insurance. So you can bid to try to cover some of the points you might take during the trick play. But if you take too much insurance to cover too much, you'll be a little bit in a world of pain. So let's go to the table and I'll show you how to play. The deck in Salvage is made up of 4 suits numbered 1 through 9. The red suits all have 1 flame each, whereas the gray and blue suits only have cards with flames on the 7, where they have 3 each. The green doesn't have any flames on it, but they do have the start player marker on the 7. Here we have the game set up for 4 players, so no matter the player count, you shuffle the cards and deal out equally, so at 4 each player gets 9 cards. Then you put these oil tokens in the center of the table, and these help kind of mitigate damage, which we'll cover in a little bit. And then over here you have the scoring track, which everyone starts at 20. Over the course of the game, players will be losing points, and how the game ends is when any player goes into the red here in the 0 or below section, and then once that happens, it's whoever has the most points still is the winner. After a deal of the cards, the first thing that happens is players will possibly pass a card. So if everyone's tied, the default is you pass 1 to the left. You actually always pass to the left in this game, but if someone does have the lowest score, then they choose whether you pass 0, 1, or 2 cards to the left. So since it's tied here, everyone will pass a card. So looking at avocado oil hand, maybe since they only have 1 black and it looks like kind of a scary card, they'll pass this 1 to the left. It happens simultaneously, so everyone will pass a card now. Then, starting with the player who has the 7 green in their hand that says start player here, which was this player, you'll start drafting or kind of taking these center oil icons, and what they are is they will help cover you, kind of insurance-wise, from points you might take in the game. So maybe this player thinks they might take at least 2 points, so they're going to take 2. You can take as many as you want. There's reasons why you won't want to take, a bunch, and I'll explain that later, but let's say they just take 2. You can pass, so maybe avocado over here passes, and you can come back in. You can just never return any oil that you do take. So you can pass and come back in, but it stops once everyone passes. So that's the kind of scariness if you do pass. Coming to Psyduck here, maybe they take 3, Submarine takes 1, the fish over here, Barnacle's fish, decides to pass, comes to avocado, they take 1, and maybe Psyduck passes, they take 1, pass, and then that's it. So now that everyone kind of has their oil situation sorted, you can kind of move these or just keep them in the center of the table as long as they're not in the way. This taking oil phase can end in one of 2 ways. So the first way is what we just saw, where everyone takes kind of enough, but no one ever takes the last oil token. And the second way is if everyone took an oil token, that does something different, but we'll get into that later. For now, the trick play just starting with the start player. Starting with the start player, they can play any suit, so they could play, this red suit that has points, but maybe they don't. They play this black helicopter suit. So then coming to avocado oil, they are short suited, so they can play any card they want. Maybe they're nervous, so they throw this 8 in the trick. After Psyduck plays their 3 of helicopters, since it is follow suit, the Submarine can only play a 2 and 8, maybe they don't want that point there, so they play the 2, making it so the Barnacles player takes this trick. When you take a trick, you just discard anything that doesn't have any fire tokens on it, just over to the side to be dealt in later, and then you do keep face up any fire tokens on them. This helps players keep track of who has gotten what points, and then the person will then lead to the next trick. Maybe they lead with the green. Fast forwarding a little bit, say Psyduck had the lead, they led the red 7, Submarine was offsuit, so they just sloughed this high 9 blue. Then Barnacles followed suit, and coming to Avocado Oil here, they also don't have red, so maybe they slough off the 7 that has 3 flames on it. So since, again, this has flames on it, Psyduck would keep this in front of them, because it is points, so kind of going into their collection here. And so players keep playing these tricks until there are no more cards. Fast forwarding to the end of the hand here, players will just cover up any points they can with all their insurance oil tokens, and then they see how many points remain, and they'll lose that many. So over here, Submarine took 1 oil coverage, and they only took 1 point, so they're fine. They don't lose any points over here on the score track. Over here, the Barnacles fish took 3, they only took 2. It doesn't matter if you took too many, they're just safe. Covered it, so they don't take any points. Avocado didn't take any, so it didn't matter what they took. And then over here, as you can see, Psyduck's a little befuzzled. They took 3, but they only covered 3 of the points, but they took 7 more than they wanted to. So say Psyduck is yellow, they would lose 7 points. Then you would collect the trick, shuffle, redeal, and you would keep playing hands again until someone hits the 0. So now let's cover the case where people start taking more insurance. Let's say Avocado is the start player and they take 4 tokens. Psyduck maybe takes 3, Submarine takes 3, Barnacles player maybe takes 2. If Avocado passes and Psyduck takes 2, maybe Submarine passes and it comes to Barnacle and they take the last one. So this triggers something special that happens in the game. So players were too greedy, and they will all lose 1 point for each oil counter they took. So Submarine over here will lose 3, maybe they're green. So then Barnacle lost 3, Avocado lost 4, and Psyduck lost 5. So as you can see, if you take a bunch and are greedy, you're at a higher risk of lowering yourself on points. So that's maybe why you wouldn't just take all the coverage you can, possibly because then you lose a ton of points over here if that ever gets depleted. So then what happens is all the tokens go back in the center, and then players pass their hand to the left, and you don't actually redeal. So then players, they don't also pass as well. They just take, starting with the start player, oil tokens again, and this happens again. So let's say, since it started with Avocado Oil, maybe the Psyduck player now has the start token. So they take 3, they take 3, they take 2, they take 2, and then pass. Then you would play the hand as normal. So the Psyduck player now had this player's hand. It's kind of a different situation. You can see what players would have taken, and you have a little bit of knowledge because you saw the previous hand that passed, so you know 2 of the hands in the game. If, though, players were greedy again and it went, you do the same thing, you would lose points, you would pass a hand, go back into the center, you go again, starting with maybe the Submarine because they would have the 7 at that point. You deal again. If this happens again and hands go back, you keep playing until if the hand ever does come back to the player, meaning the hands have fully been passed around, you'll reduce scores again. Players will keep that last hand and all the oil counters for the hand. And the rules say you would play the hand for fun, seeing how it works out. And then the scoring would be limited where players don't lose any points, but they do get 1 point if they succeed in taking equal or less damage oil tokens that they took. So for example, if the hand had passed, and this is where it was at, you would lose the points, you wouldn't move the tokens in, and then you would play an actual hand, finally, having seen all the hands, funny enough, and you would see if you would hit your bid, essentially of taking 2 or less flames for the Avocado person. And so that's that edge case, but other than that, that's how to play Salvage. So that is Salvage, and it's a neat package. I like the idea of Hearts with a shorter deck that still retains the feeling of Hearts, and the bidding mitigation has fun moments. The production itself is also just absolutely amazing. I love the crayon aesthetic. And the game itself, awesome enough, came to me through Ricky, who was one of the developers. And the awesome thing is they sent it promoting the Game Loft, which is an awesome charity, and I'm going to include a description down below. So definitely check that charity out because I think they're doing amazing work. Getting to the condensed kind of Hearts feel, we played, I think it was Dutch Hearts in the previous video, and that felt very rote and very kind of boring. And this manages to have a shorter deck in a bit of a condensed hearts feeling, but still have that sense. It's nice to have, I think, the points dole out in an interesting way, where the sevens of two of the offsuits, as opposed to just the spades, have points, but not as many points. The shooting the moon, I wish, was a little stronger. It's only 3 points to everyone else and 0 to you. Whereas in hearts, it's like a fourth of the game, right? 26 points. Whereas in this, that's not even, I can't even do math. But, I don't know, 1/7 of the game? I can't do math. But not too big of a gripe if, you wanted the short suit or shooting the moon to be a little stronger. I just never saw it happen because I think the incentive wasn't enough and the risk was a little high. Of course, getting to risk though, the management is a really cool system. I like the idea of the bidding to try to hit. It's almost like reverse bidding, right? You're kind of like blocking yourself to be bid. Sadly, in the games I played, and I mainly played at 4, so I think this probably would have happened more in 3, right? Because you have less hands to move about. But the hands never hit it to the end, final hand, where you actually try to see if you do hit your bid or under to try to get 1 point, which is an interesting twist, but I think it was just a little too late to hit. I almost wish if it would have just passed twice, you play out that hand for like a positive point. That would have been pretty interesting. As it is, the kind of avoidance bidding system is cool. I did find myself just pretty much taking 3 of those tokens and then passing until someone else took 3 or 4 and then taking 1 or more. I don't know if the incentive there is a little off, because if you take 3, you're kind of fine even if it hits. Someone else took a lot more. So you don't really care about that penalty of taking those 3 points. And 3 mitigation is like pretty good. I don't really know why you would only take 1 or 2 or 0. It wasn't bad. It was definitely interesting, but it felt a little like I would always take 3 and always do well. And maybe there's some ways to combat that, but I never saw a good reason not to take at least 3. I like the fact that the person who's losing can choose how many cards you pass. It's really cool to give a player control to make it a hold hand or make it a pass 1 or pass 2. I do wish they could also choose maybe if they could pass right or across. Passing always left felt a little tough, and I know it probably doesn't matter in the long run, but to give a little bit more agency helps that like hearts feeling in my mind of being able to affect everyone at the table or pass to everyone at the table. Maybe they tested it and we're just like, yeah, this adds just a little too much fiddle, just pass to the left, it's not really a big deal. So again, I'm finding complaints that aren't too big of a deal. I do wish that maybe there was a more interesting dynamic in the take all, because sometimes it just came down to, oh, if there's 1 or 2 tokens left, that person would only take 1 or 2 if they didn't have the most. So it was very calculated. And yeah, I don't know how you would do it, but maybe somehow making that risk of taking too many a little bit stronger. The bidding in the game is really interesting. It's fun to look at your hand, evaluate it, and bid on it, but not be too stressed about hitting the bid. It was a cool kind of loose bidding in a way. We covered top 5 bidding mechanisms, and I don't know if it would really fit too much in any of those. I wonder if it is a pretty different paradigm to bid on how much you're going to avoid and not really have to hit a bid or worry about the bid unless, again, the hand passes around, but that didn't really happen in our games. But it was a really cool bidding system. So that's Salvage. Just a couple things I had off with it, but overall, it captures hearts in a smaller package, which is really, really well done. And it has that bidding, which, while I don't know if it takes advantage fully of it, it does it pretty interestingly. And I'd like to see other games kind of try to do this avoidance bidding, which is a really interesting mechanic. So thanks so much for watching.